correspondent. He is a TIR member. Please welcome, coming all the way live from Peru, Camilo Gomez.
Hi.
Bam! Now you're on the big screen.
It's always great to be here, and yeah, I mean it's all things happening, right? And I mean, to begin, I think like it was kind of a surprise. Uh, the 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 coup in Bolivia, like it was curious. Uh, the in a way, like thinking in terms of Bolivia, like sometimes kind of grabs the news and sometimes it doesn't, and there has been like mainly on the news, like what was mainly on the news before was that Bolivia doesn't have much dollar right now because
Mhm.
it kind of got into that in the context of COVID-19, and then also like its production of natural gas, which was kind of like the center of its economy in the last 2 decades, having like being much more shorter. So in that sense, like there have been a lot of protests that kind of like follow um different trade unions, particularly of kind of uh, uh, like transport trade unions, things like that, because they buy merchandise from neighboring countries and they sell it in Bolivia, but now without dollars, like everything becomes much more difficult to exchange. And Bolivia, something that is interesting is that unlike Argentina or Venezuela, were known like to having a very massive inflation, had a very controlled exchange rate. Like one dollar was around like 7 Bolivian pesos, around that for quite a while of time. And now like there is an official exchange rate, right? Like in Argentina, the 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 exchange rate like is changing, in a it is still not as crazy as it was in Argentina. Like an official exchange rate like is 10 pesos, which is not as like as other unofficial exchange rate were like
That's
uh,
better than where I live.
or 100% different,
Yeah.
right? But it is close into something that it wasn't, right? So there has been discontent with the government, and there is also a division inside the mass between kind of like the faction led by the current president, Luis Arce, and the faction led by Evo Morales. And that
Can
is,
we? I hate to. I don't want to interrupt you too bad on that, but that is interesting because within the party, which is this is Bolivia's Socialist Party. Would you say this is the furthest left party in Bolivia right now?
yeah, it is the only party that has like kind of their own kind of inscription, right? Because like the Bolivian political tradition is very curious, because a lot of times, because of heavy influence of Trotskyism, there was always the talk of factions, right? And factions or fractions is kind of like this very Trotskyist kind of terminology, which makes sense, even in the sense like at one point like Trotskys were part of the movement over socialism. Filemon Escobar, who was well known by Trotskys, like he was also I think at one point member of the party. He was elected to Senate, and I think like so. i- Then the relation became much more sour with Trotsky's, but overall, like with the rest of the Bolivian left, like a significant part stay inside of the mass, despite their disagreements, and the other parties didn't weren't able to try to get their own how to say it, their own inscription, right? Like their other to be able to run under their own party name. Like in a strange way, some Trotskys also end up running on the Green Party, but the Green Party wasn't able to get ballot access, so that went away. And so the attempts of creating a different kind of opposition to the to the movement or socialism, like, has been there, like, mainly, as I mentioned, uh, or at least most explicitly by Trotsky's, who after, like, initially back in, like, kind of become much enemies of what they see as some indications of nationalism and populism, and they try to create a workers' party, but they also fail in that, and there are other kind of more local movements that have emerged in some parts like El Alto, but at the same time, like, it's very difficult to get an inscription in Bolivia, and things are really strange, right? Like, there are some parties on the right that would technically are in the ballot line of once a very radical party, but that, somehow, like, now runs neoliberal. So, like, Bolivian ballot access is very kind of weird, and in that sense, it has more or less prevented opposition toward the movement toward socialism to the mass. But there is also something to be said about the mass, like, in comparison to Correa in Ecuador, which is a central figure, like, that aggregates, like kind of like a significant segment of the left right behind him, even if there are other expressions of the left, like, kind of the hegemonic expression of the left in Ecuador is pro Correa. In Bolivia, kind of like the mass originates in its own name as an instrument of political change, and that is part of different trade unions, the indigenous rights activism, and kind of like, like, emergent progressive kind of, like, change driven, like, actions. And so, it is a loose coalition, but at the same time, it has shown, like, a lot of capability in the last years. That being said, like, the division between Arce and Evo Morales, now it seems much more to do with personality. So Evo Morales was much more like outspoken. Like, he had a much more experience. Like, he come from the trade union movement. He's much more, like, he has this kind of gestures that make him do things that people consider, like, almost impossible. Like, at one point, like, the FIFA was going to ban basically playing in any stadium over 3,000 meters. The problem, like, I think there are other countries that have, like, really high stadiums, but the issue is that Bolivia was probably the most famous country that could be banned to play in their own capital, La Paz, because the stadium is higher. And he somehow managed to press campaign against FIFA, and although FIFA never goes back against their statements, in that time they did. So it is an example, and there are many, like, when they tried to arrest him in detain his playing, and he managed the international community to apologize, and a lot of things that are show a very high political caliber. But at the same time, I think his personalism has caused a lot of problems for the Bolivian left, and that the support for Arce shows that there are kind of a faction that of the mass that prefers, like, kind of like the um
What would you say is a big difference between Arce and Evo Morales?
it's interesting because the other day, like, in the context of this coup, was interviewed, like, Ricardo Soberon, who is a Peruvian lawyer, but he worked until recently in Bolivia, and like, he was the advisor for the European Union, like, and he like reviewed the projects of funding in anti-drug trafficking efforts. So the the issue is that when he was asked the same question that you are asking me, he mentioned that in principle he don't see a very like very big um, division. Um, in the sense, the way that the construction of discourse has been happening, like a lot of the, even in international relations, it is very similar. They are slightly more pro Cuba, pro Venezuela, um uh, pro Russia, pro China, pro Iran. So it's not a change that is as big, but the issue is what Zuniga seem to have a prior like distaste of Evo Morales. And according to a Spanish journalist like that was speaking the other day, he in 2019 mentioned that in the previous coup, like Zuniga has been the one that called the police, and call them to side with Agnes. So it's not someone that is unknown to kind of controversy. It has controversies, like his grades were not too well, so it was kind of controversial. He got ascended. He had controversies over alleged corruption, and Zuniga, this general that led this coup, also um, seems that didn't like Evo Morales, and maybe that's also a reason why Arce put it, because in now like this open um very open like political debate, or if you will like it, confrontation between Evo Morales and Luis Arce. This place that has been there, like the of the military, is a military that has been much more friendly than people used to think. It has have a kind of general replacement, and there are people that are much more sympathetic toward a much more of left wing politics. Um, the the construction of this coup seems to have been very vague, and what it seems is like when he was replaced, because he started to say things like that he was going to arrest Evo Morales and things like that, like like even Arce, which is very opposed to Evo, like 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 it is, it was too much, and he replaced it, and then he tried to stage a coup basically in order to remain, and that's why he started saying like we are going to liberate like the political prisoners, which by then they mean like kind of more the right wingers, like connected with the previous coup. But they didn't support him, so it is kind of strange, like um I feel that there are several things that have been theorized, like that this has to do with Russia. That there is a lithium alliance with Russia now, but it doesn't seem that way. Like in the sense, like it seems like kind of he wanted to build support even if it didn't have a very elaborate plan. But some, like what I think, that obviously the theories of the CIA and are very wild. Something that is like Ricardo Soberon was the advisor for the for the European Union in Bolivia, did mention, is that more recently, like he has saw American diplomats in Bolivia trying to speak much more friendly toward the government there. So it seems like the American diplomacy, which was kind of quiet in Bolivia, like they saw us as very much more unfriendly to them. The rest of Latin America is now trying to reach out to Bolivia. So and they even have given some funding to buy some weapons to for anti-drug trafficking efforts. So so there is that, like it is interesting, like the OIS, the Organization of American States, have give like its opposition to the coup. And the only exception has been Argentina. Like Javier Milei has doubted that this has been a coup attempt. He and curiously Evo Morales have pointed out like this is a fake coup, but 14 people have got injured. Like it's not something like some sort of theater. Like it was some sort of coup attempt, which was, even if very clumsy, which was real, right? Like like it,
But
it
but it
yeah.
sounds like you question the US's potential involvement in this coup.
I think, yeah, I think it is interesting because there have been like I I will say at least three, well, two combatants before, because
Mhm.
there was one like that was not much spoken, but there was a Bolivian Jewish nationalized Hungarian for some reason that became also a Muslim and then a Nazi that tried to kill Morales, but yeah, he was killed by the military. Like that didn't give much on the news, but it was kind of a sign that there were kind of people, even if not exactly on the country, because his ally was an Irish dude somehow. But then it was like the 2019, and that was really much more linked to the US, it seems, because in that case, like it was Trump in the White House. So in that sense, like probably the reaction of democratic administration will have been different. That being said, also it's mentioned that in 2016, if Hillary will have won, I don't think she will have been particularly sympathetic to Evo Morales also. So it is still kind of complex to speculate like how it will have been, but it's probably that it's that at least it wouldn't have been so much sympathetic to the right wing narrative, at least per se. uh, and in the context of foreign involvement, I think something interesting about one former minister of Evo Morales that has been critical of Evo Morales, but he has mentioned that in the 2018 there were important efforts of the in the eastern part of the country, which is much more tropical. So generally, people think of Bolivia as an Andean country, and that's true for a significant part of the country. But the eastern part, like, is both the Amazonian part and then the Chaco area, which is much more tropical. Also, some forests, and in that area, like, there are a lot of agribusiness from some are local from the local industry, but others are from Brazilians. So Brazilians have been expanded to our neighboring countries, um, like um, like Paraguay and Bolivia, to expand like cattle ranching, because cattle ranching like employs so much space. So in order to allow cattle ranching, like, and they have been cutting a lot of trees, and a very dramatic ecological devastation that also generated a lot of fires. And that there seems to be some interest that were in the 2019 to support kind of Agnes, because she gave a lot of green pass when she was in office. I think that as far as what we know about this, like, the international community has been very silent, right? In a sense, like, it like, unlike, like, and only one, I think, one Colombian politician openly supported the coup, right? And Argentina has had this narrative that the coup was fake, but at the same time, it was not. It didn't, like, the government didn't kind of support it. And yeah, even like Paraguay was has a right wing government, also didn't, like, support it. So I think they they were confused about, like, the whole nature of this. And there is something interesting about, like, the declarations of Zúñiga, because, like, he spoke like the army is the political, the military expression of the people. So he tried to do some sort of more left wing rhetoric at the same time, to try to spoke about releasing the right wing politicians from jail. It was very kind of like of a